Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to listen to me talk. I know you've just had lunch and it's like sleepy down time, so I kind of feel like this is a nice, easy talk to ease us into the afternoon, hopefully. So my name is Jo Franchetti, and I am a developer advocate at Spotify, and this is my kitten Puff. And I'm here to talk to you about stuff that might be going on in your heads right now. The last few years have been pretty hectic, to say the least. We've had a pandemic, we've had recession, we've seen redundancies throughout the industry, and not to mention everything else that is going on in the world right now. So let's talk about feelings, and let's talk about mental health, and the things that we might prefer not to talk about most of the time. And who am I to tell you this stuff? I'm obviously not a medical professional, but I am someone who has gone through depression, burnout, anxiety, CPTSD, and I've had over a decade of working with a therapist. And I've done a lot of personal research on this topic because I'm a nerd, and when you're a nerd, you like to learn about things that people are talking to you about. And as I've been researching and as I've been talking at these tech events, I've learned that there are a lot of people out there who are feeling the same things that I am and suffering from similar issues to me. And I know things like stress and mental health can be really difficult to face and can be really difficult to talk about. So my hope for today is that I can give you just some nuggets of thought to take away with you so that you can make your own journeys, make your own mental health journeys, and learn about what's going on in your own heads. And not all of this talk is going to resonate with you. I kind of hope that not everything in this talk does resonate with you, because we're going to go into quite a lot of deep stuff. But what I do want to do is talk about the hard things, the things that are sometimes considered taboo, the things that we find difficult to talk about in a work environment. And I hope that if this stuff doesn't affect you, maybe you can learn something to bring back for a friend or a colleague who is suffering from some of these things. And I only have an hour, so I can't go into huge depth on anything. We're just going to skim the surface of a lot of these topics. If you do want to chat to me about any of these things, you can get me after the talk. I'll be here today and tomorrow, or you can get me at This Is Jo Frank on the majority of the socials, whichever socials we're using these days, because we all need to get better at talking about mental health openly and honestly. And before we get started, I'm just going to give a brief content warning here. This talk does go over some quite heavy and difficult topics. We're going to be talking about mental health, disordered thinking, self-harm, and even politics. And if any of these topics are too much for you, or there's something that you don't want to listen to right now, I will not be offended if you need to leave now or at any time throughout the talk. The important thing is that you keep yourself safe and happy. And I should also point out that the content covered in this talk is my own opinion and not necessarily that of my employer. So, story time. It's Monday morning, and you wake up, and already, the dread is starting to set in. It's another week of work. Getting up feels difficult, your body feels heavy, your eyes are heavy, your brain is sluggish, but you drag yourself out of bed and get straight to your desk because you missed your first alarm, and you have a meeting in 2 minutes. Once the meeting is over, you have a long to-do list of stuff that you need to get done throughout the day. But instead of writing down that to-do list or even getting started on that to-do list, you instead check your emails, you read a few articles, you scroll through some social media, you check in on Slack, and before you know it, the entire morning is gone and it's lunchtime and you haven't actually got down to the meat of your work yet. So now the stress is starting to set in. So you eat a packet sandwich at your desk instead of going out and taking time away. And then your afternoon is clobbered with meetings, so you don't actually get to start on your own work until about 5 p.m. when everyone else has finally left you alone. And you try and cram an entire day's worth of work into a few hours in the evening. By the time you've finished, you're feeling even more exhausted. You'd hoped that maybe you'd have time for a hobby or doing something social this evening, but you end up having not quite enough energy to pick anything up. So you order some comfort food and you watch some TV and you decide to get an early night so that you can feel less tired tomorrow. But as you climb into bed, you realize you didn't actually leave the house today. And once your head hits the pillow, all of the things that you didn't manage to get done today start to run through your head. You didn't manage to tidy the house. You forgot to reply to that email. You didn't quite finish off that piece of work that you said that you'd get done. Your boss said a weird thing in a meeting and you're not quite sure what they meant by it. Maybe they think that you're slacking. Your team members don't seem to have these same struggles. They seem to get their work done. I bet they were super productive today. I bet they had lovely sociable evenings with their friends. So to quieten this onslaught of horribleness that comes as soon as your head hits the pillow, you take your phone out and you start to play a mindless game, or you scroll social media until the small hours in the morning when you finally fall asleep through actual exhaustion. And you realize as you do that you're going to be so tired in the morning. And come the weekend, you think, great, I can finally relax. But your brain doesn't let you. You're suddenly stressed about all the things that you didn't manage to get done during the week. You are so tired that you don't wake up until midday on Saturday, and then you feel like you need to be productive because you've wasted half the day. You've wasted a quarter of your entire weekend. Why don't you have enough energy? Why aren't you able to do the things that you want to do? Now you feel like you need to be productive, but all you want to do is rest. But when you do try to rest, you feel guilty about the fact that you're resting and not doing something productive. So you cancel any of the fun things that you had planned to do to try and conserve energy for the week coming. And you guilt yourself over not having done enough. And even though you are resting, every second of that rest, your brain is telling you, why aren't you doing something? You could be doing more. I bet other people are doing more fun things. And you just feel stressed and tired and achy and nauseous. And you wonder whether this is ever going to get any better. And if any of that was relatable, I'm going to talk through some of the factors and the feelings that cause us to think like this. So, this is your autonomic nervous system. This is a system in your body that you don't consciously control, but it regulates the involuntary physiological processes, such as your heart rate, your respiration, your blood pressure, your digestion, and hormone release. And it's this system that reacts when you're under a physical threat. The autonomic nervous system produces your fight or flight response. It helps you to be ready if you need to run away from danger. And when you're under stress, the autonomic nervous system kicks in and sends a bunch of messages around the body. So it gets adrenaline around the body and cortisol and oxygen to the places where they need to be. And this can cause physical symptoms such as increased heart rate, shortness of breath, sometimes shakiness, nausea, stomach pain. And if you're feeling stress or anxiety over a prolonged period of time, it means that your autonomic nervous system is constantly being activated. It's constantly sending those stress hormones throughout your body. It's constantly increasing your heart rate. It's constantly making your muscles ready to spring into action. And your body is sort of being flooded with these warnings, even when the situation isn't life or death. And the problem with this prolonged stress and this prolonged activation of your nervous system is that your nervous system starts to become easier to trigger, and you start to become more frequently flooded with these physical symptoms. And this can actually take a massive toll on not only your mental health but also your physical health. And in today's world with the pandemic and economic collapse, house prices soaring, tech industry in turmoil, a lot of us will be feeling these physical symptoms without realizing what's actually causing them and how much the underlying stress can affect us. It's an incredibly stressful time to be alive at the moment. There's stress about what our lives are like, stress about whether or not we're going to get the virus, whether we're going to lose our jobs. And many of us are in this sort of constant state of heightened anxiety and an activated nervous system. So I'm going to go through an alphabet of the things that we might be feeling, and let's start at A for anxiety. Now, anxiety is a completely normal and natural part of life. It is completely usual and acceptable to feel anxiety when you're in a new experience or something where there might be a bit of stress, like doing a job interview or doing public speaking. And it's a normal reaction to a tough or new situation. And the physical symptoms of anxiety that we might see are rapid breathing or increased heart rate, lightheadedness, dizziness. You might start to get like some stomach interestingness, chest pain, fatigue, insomnia, headaches. And in the short term, anxiety, it increases your heart rate, it gets blood flow to your brain, and it's a very physical response which helps you to get through an intense situation. But anxiety becomes a problem when it becomes excessive or it becomes long-term. Your poor nervous system is in this constant state of activation, giving your body messages that you're in danger. And long-term anxiety can cause things like panic attacks, because your brain is constantly releasing this stress hormone. It can cause dizziness, and it can actually cause depression. This constantly increased level of adrenaline and cortisol in your body can also lead to some fun physical symptoms like muscle aches, muscle spasms. It can have issues for your immune system, so you end up getting ill more often. It can lead to IBS, so your stomach is constantly in pain. Anxiety can stop you from doing the very things that would actually help to reduce your anxiety, like socializing or trying new things, or going outside into the sunlight. But the good news is that there are a bunch of things that we can do to reduce anxiety. But they will all be very different depending on the individual. So if you feel yourself in a state of anxiety, these are some helpful coping strategies. The first and most important thing is to remember to breathe. When you're in that sort of spiral, the whirlwind of anxiety, you will find yourself breathing very quickly and shallowly. So remember first to take deep, slow, steadying breaths. I have an app on my watch that actually will buzz in time for me to take breaths. If you don't have that, you can just do counting. So breathe in slowly and deeply, counting to 7, and you want to breathe from your stomach, so really get the breath all the way through your lungs. Breathe in for 7, hold for 7, and exhale slowly, pushing with your stomach again all the way for 7. And do this for a few minutes until you start to feel your heart rate slow back down. And once you get into that state where you're being a bit more mindful and a bit less panicky, then you can start to use grounding techniques which will help you feel less anxious. And again, these are all going to be very different for the individual. We base the grounding techniques on your senses. So you want to look, listen, smell, touch, and taste. So maybe look into the distance, look away from your screen, look at something that you find calming. If you've got a nice view out your window, looking at nature can really help. Listen to sounds that you find soothing, either music or nature sounds, something that's going to calm you down. Smelling something pleasant, like a nice herbal tea or a candle or a perfume, something that you find pleasant. Touching something soft, like a pet or a cuddly toy or even just a soft scarf, can really help to ground you. Or I find fidget toys really help as well. If I'm sort of in that anxious state, it helps me direct the nerves into something. And finally, tasting something nice. So a cool glass of water or a cup of caffeine-free tea or eating some fruit can all help to take you out of that stress state and back into a more mindful moment where you're more in touch with what is actually happening in your body. And learning your own self-soothing techniques is absolutely vital, because anxiety and panic attacks can leave you absolutely tired, stressed, and burnt out. And burnout is a state of physical and emotional exhaustion. It happens when you experience long-term stress, or you've been physically or emotionally drained for a long period of time. And the common signs of burnout include things like feeling tired or drained all the time, feeling helpless or trapped all the time, feeling like you're defeated before you've even started something, feeling detached and alone, like no one's there to help you, having a very cynical mindset, or feeling a lot of self-doubt, procrastinating frequently, or feeling overwhelmed frequently. And burnout can cause your brain to feel kind of foggy and uncooperative. And it happens when you keep pushing and pushing and continuing through stress and not allowing yourself any recovery time. Since lockdown and increased things like working from home, the lines between our work and our home life have really blurred, and we're sometimes not very good at switching off at the end of the workday. And this means that even things like social interaction and social environments have changed. We're not getting those nice breaks throughout the day where we can, stop and talk to colleagues and get a cup of tea. And it just makes it more difficult to switch off, because we feel like our work and our home environment are sort of mixing, and we're checking our emails at midnight, and we're seeing Slack notifications come in from our colleagues at all times. And when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is check our phone and check our email, and our body has no time to not be thinking about work, no time to be relaxing. We're all trying to be the model employee, but by doing so, we're actually taking ourselves closer to burnout and closer to the point where we can't actually get any work done at all. And along with the brain fog and the exhaustion and the overwhelm, burnout is really dangerous. It can lead to depression, and it can lead to suicidal ideation, because you feel so helpless, you feel like there's nothing left to be done, and you need to take that final step. And many people that I've spoken to who have gone through burnout talk about just wishing that everything would just stop. And burnout isn't something that goes away on its own. Like, this is not something that you should take lightly. It can actually worsen if you don't address the underlying issues that are causing it. If you ignore the signs of burnout, it can cause harm to your physical and your mental health. It can lead to chronic fatigue, to immune system issues, and to memory loss. If you push past your limits, it isn't something that you can just take a holiday from. It will really, really affect your body. But burnout can be avoided by just putting a little bit of self-care into our daily routine. So even if you are working long hours, or you're studying, or you're taking care of young children, remember just to sprinkle a little bit of you time, a little bit of joy into your day. It is absolutely essential to replenish your emotional energy and your physical energy, and it's actually going to help you to focus. So if you're having trouble squeezing these kinds of things into your day, try and use a weekly calendar to assess how it is that you're actually spending your time. So you can do this, on a piece of paper or in a spreadsheet or in an app, and block out maybe every 2 hours of each day and just write down what it is that you're doing, how you're feeling about what it is that you're doing, and maybe give it a scale. So from 1 to 10, where 10 equals I'm completely happy and this is brilliant and I love what I'm doing, and 1 equals I'm drained, I hate this, I never want to do this again. And then also give it a scale of how valuable you think that activity is. So did I really need to do this and it was draining but it needed to get done, or I didn't need to do this and it was draining and maybe I can look at how I can get rid of this in the future. And it'll help you find opportunities for where you can limit your exposure to tasks that are massively draining. And it'll help you assess the things that put you in a negative mood versus put you in a positive mood, and help you increase your investment in the things that make you happy. Stress is just something that happens. It's an unavoidable part of life, but burnout should be preventable. And as much as it pains me to say, and people told me this throughout my entire life, and I was like, yeah, whatever. These 5 things will make a real difference. So, exercise. I hate to say it, but exercise makes a massive difference. It helps you to connect with your body. And I'm not talking about, going and doing an hour-long workout at the gym. It can be, a gentle walk or just doing some stretching, anything that makes you a little bit more mindful of how your muscles are feeling, how your body is feeling generally. Next, try and eat well. Eating a healthy diet, balanced diet with a good amount of slow-release carbohydrates, good fats and vitamins is a natural antidepressant. It will actually help give your body the nutrients that it needs, and it can give you a mood boost. Practice good sleeping habits if you can. Try and get in a relaxing time before bed. So instead of going straight from I'm using my laptop to I'm now in bed, or I'm using my phone to I'm now in bed, have some time away from your screen, have some time where you can wind down before your head hits the pillow. And don't forget to ask for help. During stressful times, it can feel really difficult to reach out to other people. And asking for assistance just feels like you're being a burden on somebody, but you're not. Consider implementing a self-care check-in with a friend, just so that you can take care of each other in difficult times. If you're having a stressful day, just be able to message them and say like, I had a crap time today. And then they can know to check in on you over the next few days, just to make sure that your mental health isn't suffering too much. And the tech industry has seen so many cases of burnout. I bet every single person in this room has either felt burnout at some point or knows someone who is burnt out. We have this dangerous tendency to blur the lines between our jobs and our lives because we love what we do. And, we all think of ourselves as nerds, and we all think of ourselves as enthusiastic. We all constantly want to know everything, to be the smartest person in the room. And we're constantly comparing ourselves to these experts that we see on stage and that we read in articles, and we're constantly thinking like, I'm not doing as well as them, I need to keep going. But it's really no surprise when we're acting like this, we're basically burning the candle at both ends, and then we're sort of caught unawares when it meets in the middle and we've got nothing left to give. And there is another reason why a lot of us are burning out, and that's not personal pride. It is this thing here, capitalism. So if we look it up in Wikipedia, capitalism is an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. And the essential feature of capitalism is to make profit. And so under capitalism, we have assets such as materials and factories and land that is privately owned. And labor is then purchased in order to add value to these assets and to produce products which are then sold to get more capital. And of course, the people who are doing the labor are rewarded. We're all paid to do our work. But in order for profit to come out of the end, the labor kind of has to be undervalued. It has to be paid less than it is worth, or the capitalists and the business owners wouldn't be making a profit out the end. And this is a really difficult topic to talk about in such a short amount of time, and of course I'm going to do a mediocre job, but here we go. The majority of us are those laborers in the middle. We're working to create profit for a business owner somewhere. And I realize we work in tech. We're all very well paid. That's great. We're very well off. We're using our skills and our creativity and our drive and our energy to try and make better things. And we tend to love what we do. And we want to make improvements to the world. We want to make the world a better place. But the thing is that the people at the top, the investors and the business owners, especially for those of us who are working in very large corporations, aren't so interested in making the world a better place. They're more interested in making a profit. And this is one of the major forces that is causing burnout. We have this sort of balance of intentions of the people who want to do good stuff and build cool things, and the people who just want to make a profit out the end of it. And we're now living in a world where we're no longer able to earn the capital that is required to potentially buy a house or to live a comfortable life. And for some people, they can't even afford food and heating. And we're taught that we should just keep working harder, we should keep chasing that dollar. And it's this hustle culture that we're living through that is lied to us about how if we just keep working hard enough, we'll be able to reach that point where we're comfortable. If we go above and beyond, then we can reach that point of comfort. But the truth is, for the majority of us, that's not possible. It can't be possible, or the 1% wouldn't exist. There have to be people who are taken advantage of in order for others to become incredibly wealthy. And we start hearing this lie from when we're very young. When we're in school, we're told that we need to constantly be achieving, we need to get good grades. And then your teacher and your parents convince you that you need to go straight to university and get the best education that you can so you can get the best job that you possibly can. And when you finally get that job, you want to perform as well as you possibly can so that your boss tells you that you did a good job. We are sort of trained to want praise and to be seen as the best at what we do. And I hate to generalize, but I'm going to guess that a lot of us in this room were the little kid who was, we were top of the class. We were the one who desperately wanted to be, first in all the tests. We wanted to get the teacher's praise, and we learnt to base our self-worth on how capable we were of continuing to be the best, being at the top of the class, getting the most praise we possibly could. Which means that we feel like we need to be constantly working, we need to be constantly productive, we need to constantly be showing what we're doing so that other people tell us that we're doing okay and we're doing a good job. We constantly need that external validation. And it just leads you to working harder than you really are paid to do. You're giving your time and your energy and your physical and mental health to these jobs where you're only paid to work. They don't want your entire life force. They just want you to do a job. But we feel like we need to give everything. And I'm afraid I don't have a huge amount of advice on how to avoid capitalism. If you notice your fellow employees working overtime, giving too much, getting incredibly stressed, please have a word with them. Give to charities. Help folks from minority backgrounds. Help make sure that everyone in your team is paid a fair wage. Vote next time there's an election. Capitalism is as capitalism does. But this leads me on to our next letter. Anxiety and burnout and overwork, amongst other things, can have a massive impact on your mental well-being, and record numbers of people at the moment are feeling poor mental health, according to the World Health Organization. It's globally estimated that around 5% of adults are suffering from depression. And depression is characterized by a feeling of persistent sadness, a lack of interest in things that you previously enjoyed, a lack of feeling of pleasure or pride or achievement, and just a lack of connection with the people who are around you. And depression can really drain your cognitive function. A good prediction of depression is self-criticism. So if you have that little nasty voice in the back of your head that tells you you're not good enough, that there's no way that you could possibly compare to the people around you, that you shouldn't even try. And self-criticism and low self-esteem can be caused by depression, they can be caused by burnout, they can be caused by imposter syndrome, they can be caused by perfectionism, which I'll talk about later. And all of these are really prevalent in people who work in the tech industry. Worsening matters, Being self-critical not only leads to depressive symptoms, but then those depressive symptoms can make your self-criticism worse, and we get this fun, horrible cycle. And depression is a real illness, and it should be treated with as much respect as we would treat, for example, a broken leg. And the good news is that help is available. Again, I know it's easy to say, but there are things that you can do to help yourself out of a depressive episode. Getting exercise, getting outdoors, eating well, sleeping, these things all actually work. And I know everybody tells us this, and it's very easy to say and less easy to do, but they really do make a big difference. One of the best ways to get to know the things that help you out of a depressive episode is to do talking therapy, and I will talk a little bit deeper about this later. But getting a therapist can feel like a really big step, and it can feel like, you're being self-indulgent by getting a therapist for yourself. And I get it. It took me 2 years when a friend said to me, maybe you should get therapy, for me to go, oh, no, wait, I do actually need therapy. At first, I was just like, what are you talking about? I don't need therapy. I get it. It's difficult. But once you have spoken to a therapist, you can decide together the things that might help you out. One of those things might be medication. With both therapy and medication, you don't have to take the first thing that is offered to you. You can speak to multiple different therapists and find the one that works for you. You can try multiple different medications and try the one that works for you. And I would like to reiterate, there is absolutely no shame in seeking any of these options, and there should be no shame in talking about it with your colleagues, with your friends, and just making this an easier thing for us to talk about and an easier thing for us to recognize in other people. Okay, so this was all quite heavy going. We're going to take a little mental breather. So E is for emu. So let's watch Emmanuel the emu.
Rebecca, and Richard. Those are Rias, and those are actually more similar to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, don't do it. Emmanuel, do not do it. Emmanuel? Emmanuel Todd Lopez. Emmanuel. That brings me great joy in my soul that you listened. I love you. You are a good boy. Come here. Come show them how big you are. Everybody thinks you and Humpty are the same type of cow. This is a... Emmanuel, do not do it. Emmanuel, don't do it. Emmanuel! Don't do it. I'm trying to educate people right now, okay? Can you just stop? Inches tall.
Okay, so emu are flightless birds, and if they are like Emmanuel, they are also kind of up for a fight, which leads me on to our next topic. F is for fight or flight. And the fight or flight response is the body's natural physiological reaction to a stressful environment, to a frightening or a dangerous event. And it's activated by your perception of a threat. So what it does is it very quickly activates that autonomic nervous system into releasing the hormones and preparing your body to either run away from the threat or to take it head on. And it's a holdover from, ancient ancestors who had to choose, if they're faced by like a saber-toothed tiger, do I stay or do I run? And it gives your body, that little bit of extra energy boost to keep you nimble and strong and focused. And we call these, when this happens, we say that you're in a state of activation, or you're in a state of high arousal. Your blood is pumping, you're breathing fast, you're getting a lot of oxygen to your muscles. And many of the high arousal situations that we face in modern life are nothing like facing a saber-toothed tiger. Well, it depends how you feel about interviews. It could be something like a difficult meeting or a salary discussion. But the problem comes again when we're talking about a long-term state of activation. Long-term or repeated stress can cause our nervous system to be in constant activation, a constant fight or flight mode. And it can be absolutely exhausting to live with. Imagine your body's constantly telling you, you're in danger. Like, it's just so tiring. And it gets to the point where even small stresses, like having to decide what you're having for dinner that night, or deciding where you want to go that evening, can become emotionally overwhelming because your body's like, you're in danger. And you're like, I just need to decide whether I want burger or pizza. And psychologists have come to realize that our bodies don't only choose fight or flight mode. There's actually 2 other options as well, which are a lot less spoken about. So I don't know if you've heard of the freeze or fawn options as well. So not only can stress give you the opportunity to fight or to run away, it can actually just cause you to freeze in very high stress environments. If you've ever come out of an interview and been unable to remember what on earth it was that you just said in that interview, that could be a freeze response. It's your body just completely shutting down and going into automatic mode. Shutting down your active thinking and losing yourself in doom scrolling or in playing a silly game is also a freeze response. It's, I don't know how to deal with this, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm just going to shut down and we're going to have no input is allowed, only silly game. And if you ever find yourself procrastinating over a task that you know that you need to get done, that's also a freeze response. You can't do badly at the task if you never start it. Your body is shutting down rather than doing the thing that it doesn't want to do. Super helpful. Thanks, brain. And getting out of a freeze state can be really tough. It requires a lot of self-kindness, and it requires really understanding what is happening in your body. You need to recognize, okay, I'm in a freeze state, I'm shutting down, I'm curling up, I'm going to a place where my brain doesn't want to do anything. How can I break up the tasks that I don't want to do into smaller, manageable tasks? How can I vocalize to somebody that I need their help to get me out of this state? And again, this is absolutely something that you can work on with a therapist. Highly recommend. And so the other thing is fawning. And fawning is a strategy that we subconsciously learn to get out of trouble. And it can quite often come as trauma from interacting with a difficult person at a young age. It's the thing that we do when we bend over backwards to please somebody. And I'm not talking about, being nice or being considerate. I'm talking about putting everybody else's needs before your own needs. It's an over niceness, and it stems from us learning that everybody has to like us in order for us to survive, in order for us to get the nurturing that we need. So if you find yourself, are you the person that maybe apologizes for everything? Have you ever walked into a room and said sorry to the people in the room, and they're like, what are you apologizing for? You're like, existing? Or if you're the person that gets made to take notes in a meeting, for example, and you just sit there, you go, yeah, okay, I can do that. Or if anybody needs anything done, you're the person who says, oh yeah, I can totally do that, everybody, I'm happy to take on all these extra responsibilities as long as everybody likes me, and then I'll be safe. One of the things that I do is at the end of video calls, I turn into this ridiculous person who's like, thanks, bye, everyone, you're amazing, thank you so much, oh, this has been brilliant, thanks. And I'm just like, where is this person coming from? And the problem with this fawn response is that you rarely put your own needs first, and you have a tendency to attract people who can see what you're doing and know that they can take advantage of that and make you do extra work for them. And if you do find yourself giving these sort of fawn responses, the thing that you need to learn to do is to say no more regularly. If somebody asks you to do something, it's totally fine for you to say no. They might be disappointed in the moment, but they're not going to hate you. Understand that conflict is sometimes unavoidable, is sometimes necessary. It's just going to get you past a difficult phase. It's not going to make everybody hate you. And try and learn to use a different phrase other than sorry. So instead of apologizing for existing or being in a space, say thank you. So instead of I'm sorry I'm late, or I'm sorry for taking your time, say thank you for waiting for me, or thank you for coming to this meeting. Let's move on to G. So I don't want to have to tell you to touch grass, but please everybody touch grass. Spending time outside in nature makes such a huge difference to your mental health. There was some research done in hospitals and schools that found having just one plant in your room and looking at that plant can have a massive impact on how much stress you feel. And some researchers in Australia did this amazing study where they had a bunch of students engage in a really dull, repetitive task. They just had to press a key when a certain number flashed up on the screen. And the students who, before doing this task, were sat by a window looking out on a garden for 40 seconds made significantly fewer mistakes than the students who were sat at a window looking out at a concrete roof. Just looking at nature can have a massive impact on how relaxed our brain feels and how capable we are of processing. So if you can't touch grass, at least look at a leaf. And with many of us working from home, we're not getting outside as much as we can. So try and schedule time to actually get outside and, go for a walk, look into the distance. Try and schedule in time for socializing that isn't work-related so that we can actually take a break and have that social interaction that increases that sort of dopamine in our minds without mindlessly scrolling social media. A lot of people who are working from home report that they feel massively isolated. And another thing that a really interesting study that I found said that we're all starting to get stressed by seeing our own faces so much. Because when you're in a video call, who do you look at in the video call? You have a tendency to look at your own face, right? And a lot of us then, especially those of us who have low self-esteem, find ourselves judging ourselves and judging our own faces because we're staring at them for hours in a day. So make sure that you are giving yourself away from screen time, that you're giving yourself pleasant social time, and you're giving your brain just a chance to chill out a little bit. Make sure when you're working from home that you're setting boundaries as much as possible. And I realize this is really difficult, and it's something we're all still learning to understand. But make sure that you have work hours and home hours, and when you're not working, you're putting your phone away, you're putting your email away, you're turning off your Slack notifications, you're not getting your brain back into that stress place when you're supposed to be relaxing. Make sure that you've got a really great workstation set up, you've got a comfortable chair, your desk is the right height. Keeping your body in a comfortable and healthy place makes a huge difference. Take regular breaks. As I mentioned, look at a leaf, like have a window nearby or a plant or something. Remember to have some sort of social connection with your colleagues, and try not to check your work email just before you go to bed or first thing when you wake up. Give your brain a little bit of relaxing time, a little bit of separation time so that you can wind down in the evening and wind back up in the morning. By checking your work email first thing in the morning, you're jumping your autonomic nervous system back into stress time. We've just woken up and now it's time to already be thinking about what we're doing. Like, no. Go look outside, have some nice breakfast, have a cup of tea, chill out, then check your work email. Part of the reason why a lot of us are doing all this working overtime, we're checking our work email, we're checking Slack all the time, is because we want to feel like we're good enough and we want to show our colleagues that we're working as hard as we possibly can and we're the best one that we can possibly be because of this thing called Impostor Syndrome. And Impostor Syndrome makes you feel like you're a fraud, that by dumb luck you've ended up in the same place as people who are worthy, and that you don't actually deserve to be where you are. And this is an incredibly universal feeling. Like, I'm going to make the assumption that everyone in this room has felt imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. People like yourselves who are highly skilled, highly intelligent, tend to think that our colleagues are also highly skilled and highly intelligent. And this can lead us to judge ourselves against them, but to do so really unfairly and harshly. And this judgment can cause you to see the things that you've achieved, but believe that you don't deserve them, that the qualifications and the accolades that you have earned are in some way not as good as the ones that your colleagues have earned, or that you got them because of luck, or you got them because of somebody else helping you, that it wasn't just you who managed to do it. And it can be coupled with the belief that this accolade that you got somehow it's not worth anything because you got it. It must be easy. It's not praiseworthy anymore. Have you ever worked on a project and felt like, when you finally completed it, it wasn't good enough, or that it wasn't enough to prove to yourself that you deserve to be there? Or that someone made a mistake in awarding an accolade or a qualification to you? Or that what you did was just luck and it wasn't actually earned? Imposter syndrome doesn't let you feel any pride or joy in any of your achievements because it constantly wants you to be working towards the next thing and the next thing. And the more that I've spoken to people who work in the tech industry about imposter syndrome, the more I have learned how completely universal this feeling is. Something fishy is going on. If you feel like you're not worthy, but also the person sitting next to you feels like they're not worthy and you deserve to be there, and the person sitting next to them feels like they're not worthy and you deserve to be there, there's some sort of logical fallacy going on here. And talking with others about imposter syndrome and how much we feel this universal feeling can really help us to be a little bit more realistic about whether or not we deserve to be here and whether or not the things that we've done are worthy. Whenever I'm worrying that everyone in the room knows more than I do about something, or that I don't belong, I like to think of this thing that I call Schrodinger's imposter syndrome. It's this kind of imposter syndrome doublethink. It's cognitive dissonance. So I have convinced myself that all of my peers are far better than me, all of my peers are more intelligent than I am, all of my peers are more accomplished than I am, and I don't deserve to be here. I don't know anything, I'm never going to amount to anything. And yet, my peers are also so gullible, so stupid, that clever me has tricked them into believing that I belong amongst them. My logic is fallible, and therefore likely so is my disbelief in myself. These two things cannot exist at the same time. Okay, so we've got, 10 minutes left? We would be here all day if I tried to do every single letter of the alphabet, so let's have another cute break instead. Here is a video of a tiny goat jumping off a log.
Get up here. Did you get it? Come on.
He's having the time of his life.
Get up here.
So let's jump from J to P. And this is one of my favorite things to talk about, perfectionism. I'm pretty certain that a bunch of you have all felt some perfectionist tendencies at some point. If we look it up, perfectionism is a personality trait that is characterized by a person striving for flawlessness, setting high performance standards, and having critical self-evaluation, along with concerns regarding others' evaluations, which, if I was an employer, I'd be like, that sounds pretty great, actually. I want to hire someone who strives for flawlessness, who sets high performance standards and cares about others' evaluations. They sound like the kind of person that I want to work with. But imagine that you're that person. You are constantly striving for perfection. And I'm not talking excellence. I'm not talking brilliance. I'm talking actual perfection. You cannot help but set yourself up to fail. Not many people achieve perfection. Perfectionism is actually a blocker to achievement. Perfectionists have a tendency to measure our own self-worth on how capable we are of achieving perfection. And when we don't, which is most likely, because as I say, most people don't achieve perfection, we can be really harsh on ourselves. The problem is that our belief is that if we can't achieve perfection, we are bad people rather than we've done a bad job. Our performance is intertwined with our sense of self. When we don't succeed, we don't just feel disappointed in how we did, we feel disappointed in who we are as a person. We feel shame. And perfectionists have a tendency to engage in something called catastrophic thinking, or you might hear it called black and white thinking, where everything becomes either perfect or completely terrible disaster. And work that most people would say is good enough, or even work that most people would say is brilliant, it's not perfect and therefore it's terrible, therefore it's a complete disaster. And the tech industry and capitalism love it when we strive for perfection. They want us to be constantly building as much as we possibly can, learning as much as we possibly can, striving to become even better, striving to earn more money so that then we can spend it on becoming even better. And perfectionist employees will pressure themselves into burnout, into paralysis, into depression, all while continuing to hand in actually really great work, but never daring to ask for help, because asking for help would be proving that they can't be perfect. If somebody else has to help me, then I'm not perfect. And like those with imposter syndrome, perfectionists have a tendency to disregard their own achievements, because you can never achieve perfection. It's never good enough. So as soon as they achieve something, they're instantly like, well, that didn't work, so next thing, and next thing, and next thing. And of course it's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to overwork. It's an absolutely unsustainable and unhappy way to be. Moving on to Q. I don't know if you've heard of quiet quitting. This is a trend that sort of happened on TikTok a year or so ago. And half of the trend was employers worrying that remote workers weren't putting in the hours. And half of it was folks who are on minimum wage empowering themselves and their colleagues to resist hustle culture. And if we boil it all down, quiet quitting is when an employee puts in no more effort to their job than they are paid to do. It's about resisting the go over and above mentality. Quiet quitting, it's not a thing. It's not actually a thing, although the media would like us to believe that it's a thing. It is literally just setting healthy boundaries and doing the amount of work that is expected of you, and not working yourself into an early grave. And with the economy in its current state, a lot of us haven't seen a pay rise in a while. With inflation and the cost of living increasing constantly, it's kind of understandable why employees might be just, reeling it back a bit, thinking about how much effort they're putting into their jobs. And I'm not talking about, doing a rubbish job. I'm talking about continuing to do your job as excellently as you always would, but making sure that you're setting those boundaries. So not checking your work email in the middle of the night, not checking it as soon as you get up in the morning. And recognizing that a lot of these, what we call citizenship behaviors, are actually worthy and important. So things like staying late or coming in early or helping to organize work socials, or attending non-mandatory meetings. These are all things that are actually worthy and worthwhile and should be considered praiseworthy. And these are things that you should be talking with your manager about doing. So making sure that if you are doing these things, if you are coming in early, if you're working late, if you're organizing work socials, people know that you're doing this so that you can get the praise for it. It's also worth mentioning that for women, for people of color, and for immigrants, it's often a luxury to not take on these citizenship behaviors. Minorities in tech and those who require a visa often have to do this extra emotional labor and this extra manual labor in order to be recognized as working at the same level as their peers. Leaving work on time, not replying to your emails out of hours, maintaining a healthy work-life balance is not quiet quitting, it's just taking care of yourself. Going above and beyond should be exactly that. It should be a thing that you do occasionally when necessary. It shouldn't be the expected behavior. It cannot be above and beyond if it's what's expected of you. That's just too much work. R is for rest. You are allowed to rest. Please rest. Rest is really important to reduce the stress levels, to help your body recover physically, to help your mind to recover. When you rest, you will find that your concentration level after resting is actually greatly improved. And getting good rest can sometimes require discipline and planning, which feels ridiculous, but it really does. You have to actually book in time for yourself and say, this is my resting time. Say no to people who are going to try and take that time away from you. Avoid filling that time with chores or other things that you need to get done. And don't spend the entire of your rest time staring at your screen or staring at a TV. Try and actually take some time with yourself to process your day and just mentally go through, how you're feeling and how your body's feeling, and just check in with yourself. To add to the message of getting good rest, sleep is equally important. Sleep is essential to help your body function. Your immune system, your metabolism, your memory, your attention are all improved by getting a good night's sleep. And adults need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep generally, with men needing a bit less than women, scientifically. So in order to establish a better sleep routine, I spoke about some of these briefly earlier, but try and find a sensible bedtime and stick to it, even on the weekends. Getting some exercise throughout the day will help you feel sleepy. It will help you actually sleep better. Try and abstain from things like caffeine and alcohol just before bed. Check your sleep environment. Is it a pleasant place? Is your bed somewhere where you actually want to be? Have you got a nice mattress? Have you invested in some nice bed sheets and some nice pillows? Make it a place where you actually want to be, and you will find yourself sleeping better and sleeping longer. Implement a no screen time before bed, 20 minutes before bed. Put the phone down, put it in a drawer, something like that, where you won't be tempted to pick it up. And that's the time where you're going to take to process how the day went, how you're feeling about it, so that by the time you actually close your eyes on your pillow, you've done that processing and your brain won't suddenly fire up. And if you find yourself struggling with switching off and struggling with thoughts of the day, I absolutely cannot recommend enough getting yourself some talking therapy. It is the best thing that you could possibly do for yourself. It is if there's one thing that you take away from this entire talk, it is this: please get therapy. It's like a massage for your brain. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do this. There's talking therapy, there's counseling, there's a bunch of apps. In the UK at least, you can get therapy on the NHS, but it's a slow process, or you can talk to private therapists. Like I mentioned before, you do not have to go with the first therapist that you find. Do some research into the therapists who specialize in the things that you want to talk about. book meetings with a few different ones and just get to know them. They expect you to do this. This is completely normal. And you may well find that your employer offers something like counseling or some sort of health insurance that'll help. So it's very worth speaking to your manager or your HR person to see if they support this. Okay, that was a lot. I really hope that I haven't overloaded you all. What I hope is that I've planted some seeds for you to ponder and think about over the next few days and weeks and months. And like I said, not all of this was going to resonate, but I hope that it gives you just some food for thought. I'm always up for chatting. Like I said, you can get me at This Is Joe Frank on the majority of the socials. I'm on Threads, Mastodon, X, Blue Sky, you name it, I'm there. Please look after yourselves. Please look after your friends and your colleagues and, you know, everyone in the tech industry. We are in some interesting times at the moment, and it is imperative that we carve out moments for ourselves to feel happy and joyful. And thank you all so much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day and a good evening and a good conference. Thank you.